in the small, quiet village of King's Abbot, where everyone knows everyone, and gossip is the primary currency. I, Dr. James Shepherd, have found myself at the center of a most baffling and tragic affair. It all began with the death of Mrs. Ferrars. She died on the night of the 16th of September, and I was the one called in the next morning. It was clear she had taken her own life. There was nothing to be done. But in King's Abbot, a simple suicide is never simple. My sister, Caroline, a woman of sharp intellect and an even sharper tongue, has insisted for a year that Mrs. Ferrars poisoned her own husband. Caroline, I must admit, has an uncanny knack for being right. She gathers information the way a magnet gathers pins, all while sitting placidly at home. It was this very rumor that was on the mind of Roger Ackroyd. He is the most important man in our village, the life and soul of King's Abbot, living at the grand estate of Fernley Park. He was a wealthy manufacturer, a genial, rubicund man. It was widely believed he had been courting Mrs. Ferrars and intended to marry her. Her death hit him hard. He sent for me that evening, the evening of the 17th. He was not just grieving, he was terrified. When I arrived at Fernley Park for dinner, the house was thick with tension. Ackroyd's family was there. His sister-in-law, Mrs. Cecil Ackroyd, a woman perpetually worried about her finances. Her beautiful daughter, Flora, who was, by village rumor, engaged to Ackroyd's ne'er-do-well adopted son, Ralph Peyton. Also present were Major Blunt, a stoic big-game hunter, and Ackroyd's efficient young secretary, Geoffrey Raymond. After a strained dinner, Ackroyd pulled me aside into his study. He looked like a wreck of a man. "Shepherd," he said, his voice trembling. "I have to talk to you. I'm in hell." He locked the door and told me the truth. Caroline had been right. Mrs. Ferrars had murdered her husband, but that wasn't the worst of it. For the past year, someone had known her secret. Someone had been blackmailing her. "She couldn't pay any more," Ackroyd whispered, his face pale. The strain of it drove her to this. He told me he had asked her to marry him, and in her desperation, she had confessed everything to him just the day before. She had promised to tell him the name of the blackmailer within 24 hours. Just as he said this, the evening post arrived. The butler, Parker, brought in the letters. On top was a long blue envelope. Ackroyd stared at it as if he'd seen a ghost. "Her writing," he whispered. "She must have posted it last night, just before." He ripped it open. He began to read aloud a letter from the dead woman, a letter that confirmed everything. It spoke of her torment, her guilt, and her decision to take her own life. And then he read this line: "I leave to you the punishment of the person who has made my life a hell upon earth for the last year. I propose to write his name to you now." Ackroyd's hand, holding the letter, trembled. He paused, his finger on the page, about to turn it over. "Shepherd," he said, his voice unsteady. "Forgive me, but I must read this alone." I protested. I urged him to read it then and there, but Roger Ackroyd was a pig-headed man. The more I urged him, the more stubborn he became. The letter had arrived at 20 minutes to 9. At precisely 10 minutes to 9, I left him, the letter still unread on the table beside him. I went home, my mind buzzing. At 10 o'clock, I was just heading up to bed when the telephone rang. I ran down to answer it. A voice, one I took to be Parker's, came frantically over the line. "Is that Dr. Shepherd?" "Parker, the butler at Fernley, speaking. Will you please come at once, sir? Mr. Ackroyd has been murdered." I was at Fernley in under 10 minutes, but when Parker opened the door, his face was placid. He knew nothing of any phone call. He insisted Mr. Ackroyd was fine, merely locked in his study and not to be disturbed. A terrible foreboding seized me. I insisted we break down the door. We found Roger Ackroyd as I had left him, slumped in his armchair. But this time, his head was lolled to one side, and gleaming in the lamplight, just below his collar, was the hilt of a shining, twisted dagger. The police were baffled. The door was locked from the inside. The window was open, but footprints on the sill made by shoes with rubber studs. Only confused matters. Those shoes belonged to Captain Ralph Peyton, and Ralph Peyton had vanished. The case against him was overwhelming. He was in debt. He had been seen in the village that night. He had the most to gain. Flora Ackroyd refused to believe it. And that is when she revealed our village's greatest secret. Our new neighbor, the fussy little man with the enormous mustache, who was so obsessed with growing vegetable marrows, was none other than the retired Belgian detective, Hercule Poirot. Flora begged him to investigate, to clear Ralph's name. Poirot, with a sigh about the interruption to his retirement, agreed. And so, I found myself in the unique position of acting as an assistant to this peculiar little man. The case, as he put it, was of the most interesting. Everyone in that house, my friend, Poirot told me, his egg-shaped head tilted to one side, is concealing something from me. And he was right. One by one, the lies of that night began to unravel. Mrs. Cecil Ackroyd, Flora's mother, confessed she had been in the study earlier, snooping through Ackroyd's desk, desperate to know if she'd be left any money. Flora herself, who had sworn she saw her uncle alive at 9:45, finally broke down. She had lied. She went to the study, saw Parker, and lost her nerve. She said goodnight through the locked door, but he never answered. Her alibi for the crucial time was a fabrication. Major Blunt, the quiet hunter, was hiding his own secret. He was deeply in love with Flora. Then there was the mysterious stranger I had met near the gates, a man with an American accent. Poirot, with his little gray cells, tracked him down. He was Charles Kent, a rough-talking drug addict, but he too had a secret. He was the illegitimate son of the housekeeper, Miss Russell. He had come to see her in the summer house, to demand money, and was gone long before the murder. Even the silver table in the drawing room held a clue. The dagger used to kill Ackroyd had been stolen from it. I had heard someone close the lid just before I entered the room that night. It was Miss Russell, who had just returned from her meeting with her son. Every lead was a dead end. Every alibi was a lie. But none of them brought us closer to the killer. It is like a puzzle, Poirot mused. But the pieces do not fit. The timeline was the problem. If Flora lied, who was with Ackroyd at 9:30? The secretary, Geoffrey Raymond, was positive he heard Ackroyd talking to someone. He'd heard him refuse a request for money. But was it a conversation, Poirot asked me, or was it perhaps a dictation? That was the stroke of genius. Ackroyd had recently purchased a dictaphone. He had been in the study, alone, recording a letter. The voice Raymond and Blunt heard was not a conversation. It was a machine. This meant Roger Ackroyd was killed before 9:30. This, in turn, cleared Charles Kent completely, but it made the case against Ralph Peyton impossibly black. He had motive, he had opportunity, and his wife, Ursula Bourne, the parlor maid he had secretly married, confessed that she had parted from him at 9:45, right near the house. It seemed the net had closed. The police announced that Ralph Peyton had been found and arrested in Liverpool. "It is time," Poirot announced, "for my little reunion." He gathered everyone in his sitting room, the entire family, the butler, the housekeeper, and Ralph's secret wife, Ursula. The tension was so thick you could cut it. "I have a list here," Poirot said, "of every person with the opportunity to kill Mr. Ackroyd. And everyone on that list is in this room." He smiled. "But the police are wrong. Ralph Peyton has not been arrested. He is not in Liverpool. He is, in fact." He pointed a dramatic finger at the doorway. "He is there!" Ralph Peyton stood in the doorway, pale and stunned. My heart hammered in my chest. This was impossible. I myself had hidden Ralph Peyton in a nursing home in Cranchester, convinced he would be arrested. "It is true," Poirot said, a sharp glint in his eye. "Dr. Shepherd has been most loyal to his friend. He hid Captain Peyton to protect him. He did not want the police to know." Poirot turned to the group. "But now, the case is very simple. Captain Peyton has no alibi. The case against him is overwhelming. To save him, the real criminal must confess." He beamed at us all. "I who speak to you I know the murderer. It is to that person I speak. Tomorrow, the truth goes to Inspector Raglan. This reunion is at an end." The guests filed out, bewildered and shaken. As I too turned to leave, Poirot put a hand on my arm. "A moment, my friend. Stay with me." When the last of them had gone, he turned to me, his face no longer smiling, but hard as granite. "I have taken you with me, step by step, mon ami," he said. "Now we take the last step. There was a discrepancy in time. You said you left the house at 10 to 9 and arrived at the gate at 9. A 10-minute walk. But it only takes 5 minutes." "What of it?" I said, my mouth dry. "And the telephone call," he continued, "which so conveniently brought you back to the scene. I have traced that call. It was not from Parker. It was from a patient of yours, a steward on an American liner. You asked him to ring you from the station, a simple request, so that your sister would hear the call. But the words you repeated? Those were your invention." He stepped closer. "And the chair in the study. Parker said it was pulled out, blocking the view. When the police arrived, it was pushed back. You were the only one alone in that room after you sent Parker to telephone." "But why?" I whispered. "To hide the dictaphone. But you did not hide it, mon ami. You retrieved it. It was in that black bag of yours, the one you always carry. You brought it to the house to create an alibi for yourself, and you took it away when you found the body." He looked at me, his green cat's eyes narrowed. "You killed him before you left, at 10 minutes to 9. You set the dictaphone to play at 9:30. You ran to the gate. You ran home. You waited for the call you had arranged, and you came back to discover a murder you yourself had committed." "My God," I stammered. "You're mad." "No, I am Hercule Poirot, and I know the motive. You could not let Ackroyd read that letter, the letter that named the blackmailer, the man who drove Mrs. Ferrars to suicide, the man who had been bleeding her for £20,000. He pointed a finger straight at my heart. "It was you, Dr. Shepard. He is right. I see now he is right. I sit here in my study, the same study where I began this manuscript. I have written the truth. I am rather pleased with myself as a writer. I've recorded all the facts faithfully. I meant this to be the story of one of Poirot's failures. Poor old Ackroyd. I am glad I gave him the chance to not read that letter. I was the one who blackmailed Mrs. Ferrars. I was the only one who knew the truth about her husband's death. I lost the money in a bad speculation. When I heard Mrs. Ferrars had killed herself, I knew she would have confessed to Ackroyd. I knew he would never show me mercy. The dagger was an afterthought. I'd brought my own weapon. But seeing that curio on the silver table was a stroke of luck. The dictaphone, he'd given it to me 2 days earlier to repair. My greatest fear was always Caroline. I thought she might guess, but she never will. Poirot has given me a way out. He will not go to the police until tomorrow. He is a merciful man, but I have no pity for myself. I shall enclose this manuscript and address it to Poirot. It is perhaps a kind of poetic justice. I think I will use Veronal just as Mrs. Ferrars did. I wish Hercule Poirot had never retired from work. I wish he had never come here to grow vegetable marrows.